Dawson Rider Wiki.
Hey YouTube, Dawson Rider here. Welcome to my review for the Power Rangers Lightning Collection figures. This is for the White Ranger from MMPR, Shadow Ranger from SPD, and the Red Ranger from Dino Charge. This first wave also includes Lord Zed, but these were the ones I was able to get my hands on so far. Zed will probably get here in about a week, so I'm just going to review him separately. Kind of works out since these have specific comparisons with like the alternate heads and stuff. And I wanted to get these reviews out because I got these on Amazon, so you can order them on Amazon right now, I'm presuming, or at the very least it might be back ordered, but they've been showing up in Target for about a week, little over a week, and they're not letting you buy them because apparently they're dangerous contraband on the level of end-game spoilers. So I was very excited when I was able to actually get these from Amazon without being treated like a criminal. So I was glad to get most of them, reviewing the Rangers together, but like I said, Lord Zed will be here in a week. I will be doing comparisons to previously released figures to take a look at what, the best ones are, how these compare and stuff like that. I'll take a look at them individually, but first let me just go ahead and I want to highlight how neat the boxes look. They have this really cool Ranger art on them, and it kind of continues to the side, which is neat. So like if you display them kind of like books on your shelf, if you save the packages. I really dig the packaging a ton. There's just a picture of like the figure on the back, so I'm not going to turn them around and knock these figures over, but really nice packaging compared to the Legacy collection. But let's go ahead and get started taking a look at these guys individually, and then how they compare to previous releases from Bandai. Okay, so let's first start with the White Ranger. I think overall, you can just see it. I think this is a very solid figure. Just look-wise, I do think it's one of the best, if not potentially the best, White Ranger figure released. They did a really good job at nailing the gold color here, because it's kind of a darker gold, but you can still tell that it's supposed to be kind of a gold. Maybe it could have a little bit more shine, but it's better than them dulling it down a lot. It's kind of interesting actually to see the variations they've used over the years, because like I said, I'll be bringing in a comparison here in a minute, but just taking a look at him on his own, I think they did a really good job on the head sculpt. As I mentioned, watch out for some QC issues. I was pretty lucky considering I ordered it online. There's only like one tiny little dot in the middle that bothers me just because I'm the type of person that notices that, but I was actually fairly lucky with this. Yeah, but I think they did a really good job on the proportions of it. Like, it feels pretty close to what it's like in the show, in my opinion. And it doesn't feel like the neck is too, like, it's like a little bit stout, but not too much, you know what I mean. Then you got the chest armor here, which I also think is pretty well proportioned for the show. It's made out of an interesting kind of like soft material. You can't really remove it as far as I can tell. I suppose if you really wanted to, you could cut right here and take it off and like slide it over his head when you take the helmet off. But you probably don't want to do that. It would make more sense for you to want to do that with an eventual Green Ranger figure, since, he's the one that swaps out the armors. But it's interesting that it's like the soft rubbery material rather than the usual one. As for articulation, you got pretty much your standard stuff. You have the head articulation here, 360 up and down, pretty solid. We'll switch out the heads here in a minute. You got a pretty solid little ball joint system here, and this really doesn't hinder at all because it's, well, A, not in the way, and B, it's soft. You got an elbow joint right here, swiveling at the fists, and when you remove the fists, you have it's like a really long joint. You have to pull it out. It's almost like pulling out a giant worm, but like not that bad. And then here for him, you do have this hinge joint, and I have to say I'm usually not a fan of this. Oh, and you also have the ball joint here, which is nice. So you get that movement in addition to this. I'm usually not a fan of this type of joint, but I like that you have this joint as well, so you don't just have the ab crunching, and they actually hide it here pretty well. Usually it just looks like a giant hinge in the middle of their chest, and it really just kind of stands out in a negative way. A pretty solid ball joint leg here, swiveling here. You got your knee joint here. Some nice articulation here on the foot as well. You don't have the figuarts toe joint action or anything. We'll take a look at Saba as well, just because we have it here. It's pretty decently painted. It's not like as painted as figuarts are, but it's still pretty well done. You can see there's some missing details in Saba, but they hit the right parts, especially around here. Like, they got the right colors, they shine nicely, so it's pretty decent there. The details everywhere else are pretty solidly done as well. Before we get into the different head and all that stuff, actually we're going to have that in a little bit, but just to take a look at the comparisons. First of all, this was the Super Legends figures during, I think it was Jungle Fury, some of them were RPM, some were Jungle Fury, but it was the Jungle Fury RPM mold for Bandai America. Like, you can see this one has a much brighter gold color. This one's a little bit taller than it, like he's crouching a little bit, but obviously this is a little bit shorter. It's a different style of figure. This was kind of the more 5-inch, standard figure, and this is meant to be like the, the high-end collector's figure. I think that the head sculpt is very much improved on this. this. The color is a lot more accurate. I still do have a fond place for these figures, though. This is kind of an unusual one that I almost forgot about, and I always kind of dug this figure, and I still do. This was just kind of a larger scale articulated figure from Bandai America. Let me see if I can get him to stand. They were like part of these weird, like, decently articulated muscle figures they did for a couple of the seasons, and they'd have some classic ones in there too. This is definitely a weirder one. Also, you kind of have that dull bronze here. The gold here is a little bit bright though, but I always kind of dug this figure, but you can see there's some definite differences there happening. All right, and now we have the Legacy figure. This is the Bandai America Legacy figure, essentially their equivalent of that style of line. Obviously, you can see it is taller. It's a little bit wider of a figure as well. They did go a little bit more muscular, although these honestly weren't as bad like as the one you just saw or some others. Honestly, I still think this figure is okay in some regards, like, but it's a definite improvement, definite style difference. When you see the two in terms of accuracy, of just the proportions of the helmet, of the color. This one I don't think is the world's most awful figure, and you have some details on the Saba there. And it's, you know, this is definitely a smaller figure, but yeah, there's a definite difference there. I think that's going to be interesting to see how they vary. Like, I think with the helmets, they actually got the visor pretty well done, but I think this one is far more accurate in terms of that. Alright, and lastly here, Tommy has one of the most comparisons. This has one with a head on it, or, you know, an alternate head. Here's the figure art, which is shorter, so we're now on the opposite end of the spectrum, and you can see is quite a bit more skinny. They definitely went for a brighter gold color there for him. And the figure arts, honestly, a lot of them haven't aged well. I don't think this one was too bad. And just so you know, this, like, the core body of it is the same as the one that was originally released. He just came with this alternate head here. It was a different one, which we'll compare to in a second. But yeah, there's some differences here too. And honestly, in a lot of ways, I definitely prefer this one. There is definitely a feeling of weakness to the figure arts that you feel like you could break them easy. I know some people have. I've been pretty lucky with my Sentai figure arts that I haven't. You can see that that comes apart there to make room for their articulation. You don't need to worry about that there. This is still pretty well detailed. Obviously, Saba's going to be a little bit more detailed. The head, obviously, here you can see is a great deal smaller. I think they did a pretty decent job with the proportions, but they definitely made the visor too skinny. And like I mentioned a second ago, they also clearly went with a lot brighter of a gold color. Now, just to compare, here is the head that comes with the Lightning figure, and there's a significant difference here in the fact that this one's ponytail Tommy, more commonly associated with the Green Ranger, sort of. I guess the mullet too. But honestly, they're pretty comparable. I think this one's a little bit, that's a weird way to say it, but tighter. What I do like about this one, though, is it doesn't have these weird little dots everywhere from, like, the technology they use for it. But given the price difference, it's pretty close. I mean, unless, like, the long hair versus, you know, the ponytail is a super crucial detail for you, I think you'll be pretty happy. And I think that's a really cool bit to these, that they have these alternate heads. They've done figures like this over the years before. You can see there that it just has like a giant ball joint on there that you switch it out like this and just make sure it snaps in. But you know, we've had flip heads. I know that the Mystic Legends figures did this, where you could swap out the heads, which I always thought was super cool. And it's just a neat bit if you're really into something like that, especially for seasons where they would take off their helmets and stuff like that. MMPR was definitely one of those. Looks a little bit off in some angles here, like you can see. It's funny because, like, looking above the camera, it doesn't look so bad. When I'm looking through the camera, it makes it look more off than it is. Also, just as for accessories, he comes with, obviously, Saba. You get a closed fist here, hold the Saba fist here. You have this accessory part here for, like, effects parts for Saba. And then you also have, I'm just going to bring this in because they're already in. Wow, sorry, Tommy. You have, like, another, like, choppy fist and then another, you know, closed fist on him. So you get a decent amount of options on there, which is nice. Alright, now let's go ahead and move on to Shadow Ranger. Alright, now we got our buddy Shadow Ranger in here. This is a really nice one because there really hasn't been an update of this figure in some time, which I'll talk about again in a minute. And honestly, this is also a very solid figure. The head sculpt, I'm going to be honest with you guys, is a little bit off to me. I feel that this pudges out a little too much, and you have a little bit of a problem where his neck disappears. So it's a little more off than I would have liked, which is disappointing. But given that this is the first update since basically the original Bandai line, again, I'll get to that in a second, it's still an amazing update of the helmet compared to what we've had in the past, because like I said, this guy hasn't gotten much. So it's still pretty solid. I just wish it didn't look quite as pudged out. Like, there's just something a little off about it that bothers me. This a little bit bothers me too here. You also have this sort of soft rubbery material here for his chest armor, which is kind of weird. Mainly because I made sense for Tommy's because it was like, okay, that's the armor that's kind of associated with the Green and White Ranger. But this I just always thought of as a part of the suit, so it's kind of weird that it's that. It doesn't really bother me too much. I was fairly lucky with QC on this guy in terms of ordering online. I only have one little paint nick here, but thankfully his helmet's fine, which is really what matters to me the most. I think they did a pretty good job, actually a very good job on the color of this. It's really got a nice shine to it. Not like a super shine, but you know what I mean? Like, you can tell it's supposed to have that metallic look. It doesn't feel too dull or too overdone, and they did the contrast to it pretty nicely. These look a little bit, you know, lacking on there, which is kind of a disappointment, but overall, pretty solid details, and really nice little details in here about, like, you know, where you can see the cloth of it all, or I guess the leather cloth or whatever. Articulation, very comparable to Tommy's. You kind of have the same situation going on here, and I really like that you hide the hinge joint down here with the belt, which I really appreciate. Basically the same. The only real note I have articulation-wise for this guy is my legs are a little bit loose. Not my legs, but Shadow Ranger's legs, which is a little bit disappointing. You got the holster here, or the sheath, or whatever you want to call it, for you got his Shadow Saber here, which I feel like I wish it was a little bit shinier, like it's a little bit of a dull gray, which is kind of annoying. I feel like nitpicky, but it's just, you know, a lot of hype for these figures, but still pretty solid. As for what he comes with, this hand right here is actually meant to hold the morpher. You have the Shadow Saber, the hand on that, which can hold it. You have this here, which we'll switch out in a second, but this is actually his head for switching out the helmets, which is really, really cool. I think it's really neat that they did it for him. Like I mentioned, Tommy's from a season where they did this a lot. There really wasn't any precedent in SPD for this outside of the morphing sequence, but I think it's super cool and unique, especially given that this was you know, our own design on Doggie Cruger's look, and I think it's a unique way to display it. Like, I mean, you know, he never really took it off in the show, but still, just kind of a neat bit. There's also a little thing I'll get to in a second. There's like a little collar to put around his neck for when you switch the modes, so it looks like it's his actual neck. Then you have here, I was trying to avoid that, the spiral effect part here for the sword, and then you have this hand, which is just kind of a pose martial artsy hand, and a closed fist hand. You only have one closed fist hand. That kind of bothers me. Tyler's like that too, spoiler alert, but it just bothers me because I think I'm used to Figuarts having two closed fist hands, and, you know, I don't want to complain too much because considering with Legacy we got nothing of that sort, but it just seems weird, like, the choices they make with which hands you get and how many. But like I said, there's really only one direct comparison to make. This is the 5-inch Bandai America figure back from 2005. He hasn't really gotten an update. I mean, there might have been a super large scale 12-inch. I don't own it if there was one. There was the SWAT mode version of this. There's obviously the Deca Master Sentai vinyl figure, which actually doesn't look too bad. But in terms of an articulated figure, this is really the first true update in all those years, because he never got an action hero release either during Bandai America's reign, so you can see the clear improvement. Like, I'll admit I have my little nitpicks about the Shadow Ranger figure, especially compared to White Ranger, but this is a clear and obvious upgrade. Now, I said it was the only direct comparison, but I felt it was worth at least taking a look here next to s.h.figuarts Deca Red, because, you know, it's from the same team. A lot of people wonder how they fit in with them. There was no Figuarts Deca Master. They only did the Core 5. He's having trouble standing because he was in a bag and then his legs got all twisted up, but it doesn't fit in exactly. Shadow Ranger's obviously quite a bit taller than him, as you can see. The proportions and style of the figure are very distinctly different, but honestly it's not too bad if you want to have him stand in with your Figuarts in the meantime, mainly because you can sort of say, I mean, I don't remember, was Doggie that much taller than Red? I don't know, but I think just in terms of the, you know, the body factor, he was kind of a bulkier Ranger, so it's actually not too bad, but there's definitely a significant difference happening there, but I thought that was worth taking a look at. Okay, so now we have, taking off the head here, so you have this little collary piece that you can put over here so that it kind of looks like it's his full neck flowing onto it, which I appreciate. That kind of makes it seem a little bit less awkward, especially given his head being so out of proportion, and it's kind of a weird thing, and it actually works a lot better than I thought it would, which I think is super cool. I mean, I almost didn't need it just because usually the Rangers, you know, cloth here goes up over their necks so you don't see their skin, but I think for this it actually worked in its favor because I think it really, like I said, made this work better than it has any right to, really, when we think about it. That's pretty cool. Alright, so now let's go on to real quickly, I almost forgot to go over the morpher that he comes with, which is pretty basic. Like, it's basically a little little black brick with some gold SPD paint on it. A lot of people are kind of unnerved that it's mirrored, like this little slider is supposed to be on this side because you can see that the change selector is on here. I'm gonna be honest, it doesn't bother me too much. I just pretend it's from the mirror world, but that is definitely a thing that's upsetting people. Like I said, I don't care too much. Honestly, I'm more annoyed by the fact that you can't really put it on the back. Like, he can hold it, the hand I had on him, he can hold it, but I wish there was a way to slide it in the back. Like the Doggie Ranger Figuarts had an empty holster you could slide on, so that's the only thing that kind of nitpicks me a little bit. Alright, now on to Tyler for real. Probably not his dad though, but don't tell him. Okay, so we got Dino Charge Red in here. Overall, another very solid figure. This guy I didn't look out on as much in terms of the QC lottery. He's got a big black smudge here on the top of his helmet, this little weird smudge on his chest. Like, I was excited for this figure too, but it was probably one of the three of the three Rangers at least that I was least excited about, so if it had to be anybody. But overall, he's a very solid figure look-wise. Again, setting aside the QC issues, I think they did a very good job on the helmet in terms of the scale, in terms of the paint. Same thing for the paint here. The yellow stands out nicely. You got the nice details there. Pretty solid job on the look of the arms standing out from the chest, given the differences. I feel it's a little bit stark. Tony Stank, no, but like I just feel like it's a little bit too drastic, but it's still pretty solid. Just solid all around. The only real, excuse me, detail complaint I have is that I wish they included some little outlines here for this. Like, I feel it just makes it look like a blotch, and it just kind of bothers me a little bit. And I wish that the Dino Charge Morpher had a little bit more paint on it. Like, it's, again, I hate to get nitpicky, but just a couple of, maybe just the eyes. I think it's just the eyes. The fact that it doesn't have the eyes bothers me. Articulation also pretty much primarily the same. Solid job at hiding the hinge joint. And this one, fortunately, I don't have any loose joint problems on. Only Shadow Ranger, unfortunately. Accessories-wise, you have this little electrical bit, which you use for Miles Morales' webs. No, it's for the sword accessory, which I'll grab here in a second. And here's the sword accessory, also pretty solid. I wish there was a way you could see the eyes a little bit more. I think that's what's doing it for me, or not doing it for me, I guess, in that case. But that's where you put the lightning bit on. Also have two extra hands here. You have another holding hand for, you know, weapons, and then another closed fist. This is another one that only comes with one closed fist. I feel like that's a really weird nitpick, but it bothers me just a little bit because it's such a normal thing that it just makes it odd, and I'm not sure why they did it, just to be honest. And then you have the head here. I've already kind of showed how to swap them out, so I'm not going to bother swapping his out too. But they did a pretty decent job on him. I mean, it looks kind of like he lost his soul, but I think both his and Tommy's, in terms of human heads, do a pretty decent job, especially for this price point, at mimicking their heads, which is pretty cool. So I have a couple different comparisons here for him. Oh, he blurred out a little bit. Sorry about that, Tyler. Let's just kind of move back a little bit. So here is the standard action hero line from Bandai America. Obviously, you can see a very significant size difference, type, you know, just different type of figure in general. Like I said, this is like the Marvel Legends, you know, $20 figure. This was a basic line figure, so there's definitely some significant differences there. His head looks exceptionally tiny when I have these two next to each other in terms of proportions. But see, I was talking about, like, Shadow Ranger didn't even get an update of this back during the Super Mega Force line. Here he is next to the figure art from Kruger. Obviously, he doesn't come with the armed-on parts, which I have on him, so there's a difference there. Like, this guy comes with parts to not have armed on. I just had him displayed like that. And this one honestly isn't so bad. I think this one's more accurate in terms of this one being pretty skinny. The helmet on this is also a little skinny. So yeah, there is some differences there. And also that kind of answers your question if it fits in. Although if you have the figure arts of this, you know, and you want something to fit in, just get this one. And then another weird one from that giant muscly line. Here is a muscle figure of this power up here. I think you can take, yeah, you can take those off too, but that's just kind of an idea. This wasn't really like a legacy line type deal, but it was kind of like those weird ones where they would occasionally do more articulated, larger scale muscle figures. So yeah, just for a comparison for some of the versions out there. All right, let's move on to the final verdict. Okay, so that's about it for this one. Overall, these figures are not perfect, and I think there was a lot of hype around them, and, you know, a lot of expectation around them as well, for myself and others, because of, you know, the way the the Legacy collection went and everything. So they're not perfect, but I still think they're very solid figures, and very much so worth looking into if you're a fan, because for $20, we're getting so much more of a value, I think, than the Legacy figures. I mean, you saw the Legacy figures are a little bit taller, but these are much better proportioned, much better detailed. We have much better accessories. You don't have the Build-A-Figure, but that's not a huge deal to me. Like I said, I was a little bit bothered by the weird hand count, like not having two closed fists, but we're getting alternate hands, which is a step up from the Legacy collection. You get different weapons, you get the alternate heads. I definitely think it's a significant upgrade. Not perfect, but very solid and very nice figures. My only real complaints being stuff like what I mentioned with the hands, the loose joints, Shadow Ranger looking a bit off, but I think this guy looks excellent. And it's funny that Shadow Ranger is the one I think I have the most problems with in terms of looking off, but I would still recommend him the most in a lot of ways because he's had the least amount of updates and different versions of figures, so he's definitely a significant upgrade for Shadow Ranger fans if you're looking for a nice one. So overall, I can definitely recommend checking these out, even if they're not perfect. Just, you know, be sure, I would recommend not ordering online if you are really worried about the QC. Definitely go into the store once they let you buy them and, you know, look at the figures and see what paint mistakes they have and try to find a perfect one. You're not going to be able to tell, you know, if it's going to have loose legs or not, but you'll be able to find one. Like when I was going through them in the store, not all of them had QC issues. So, you know, just mind that. But anyway, until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and of course, don't forget to climb the steps and ring that bell to notifications for all my videos. Until next time, Dawson Ryder, signing out.